Venezuela is in the world's spotlight right now, not just for internal crisis, but because the United States has launched a military operation that captured the country's president Nicolás Maduro and brought him to the US to face charges. Now, this is historic, controversial, and potentially a major turning point for Latin America. Now, let's understand what has happened in Venezuela. In early January 2026, to be precise, on 3rd of January, the US carried out a large scale military operation inside Venezuela that resulted in the capture of President Nicolas Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores. They were flown to New York and appeared in federal court where they pleaded not guilty to the criminal charges imposed on them. However, the US government had long accused Maduro's administration of involvement in various crimes, and officials says that these charges date back several years. Now, inside Venezuela, Maduro's removal created a political vacuum. The Venezuelan Supreme Court has appointed the Vice President Delcy Rodriguez as interim president. But the situation on the ground remains tense, with reports of heightened repression and efforts by authorities to silence dissent. Now, many of the citizens have also fled the country in past years due to economic collapse, shortages, and insecurities. Millions are living abroad as part of one of the largest refugee movements in the Western Hemisphere. Now, let's understand and look at US involvement here. The United States government says this was not an act of occupation but a law enforcement operation to arrest individuals, indicated in the US courts. At the UN, US representatives have defended the action by asserting that Venezuela was being governed by leaders involved in various crimes and that the operation was intended to protect security and uphold justice. They also insist that US is not occupying Venezuela and that this action aligns with long-standing lawful indictments. President Donald Trump has publicly stated that the US would temporarily run Venezuela until a stable transition of power could be arranged, emphasizing the need for order and safe governance. Now, he has also highlighted the role that Venezuelan oil reserves could play under American oversight. Here, US officials are arguing that the aim is to prevent Venezuela from being a haven for criminal networks and to ensure stability rather than perpetuate conflict. But now let's talk about why these matters beyond what the US officially says. First and foremost is oil reserves. Now, Venezuela has the world's largest proven oil reserve, but production collapsed in the recent years due to mismanagement, sanctions, and lack of investment. This resource represents strategic value to global markets and potentially to US firms interested in rebuilding and operating in this sector. Now comes the geopolitical influence. Venezuela is a key player in Latin America, historically allied with countries like Russia, China, and Cuba. Now, US intervention weakens rival influence in this region. Competing global powers have condemned that the US action as a breach of sovereignty. Also, regional power dynamics. By asserting control over Venezuela's government transition, the US could be reinforcing its strategic position in the Western Hemisphere, which is a core objective of US foreign policy for decades. Here, international reaction has been sharply divided on this. Some countries and international legal experts argue that the US operation violated core principles of international law because it used force without UN's authorization. Critics say this sets a dangerous precedent, potentially inviting similar actions by other global powers in the future. Now, others have expressed concern over the impact on regional stability and the humanitarian crisis inside the country. But here is the bottom line: Venezuela's president has been removed by force. A new interim leader is trying to stabilize a volatile situation, and the US says it acted to enforce justice and bring a transition. But behind those claims are complex strategic interests, especially related to oil, regional influence, and geopolitical power. This is one of the most significant international stories of 2026, and it is still unfolding. Let me know what you really think is the motivation behind this situation and how you see this shaping the future of Latin America.